carefully weighed the human cost of every option before us. As the Commander-in-Chief, I know the risks to our country, fully responsible to the young men and women in uniform who may face these risks.
Unlike the men and women we memorialize here today, we are fortunate to still be living. This leaves us with a great responsibility. The responsibility to live good, honorable lives. To join hands with people from all over the world and seek ways to end the tragedies of war forever. We have a responsibility to take on this mission for those individuals represented by these symbols, as well as the millions of people whose lives have been taken or forever changed by war.
Turning on the TV, we would see President Bush talking about how evil Iraq was, how evil Saddam Hussein was, and how much we needed to take him out to make the world safe for democracy. So at that point, I felt that it was the right thing to do. And as a soldier, you're trained from day one to do what you're told when you're told to do it. So we joined. I thought that was the best thing. We were doing what was best for the country by going into Iraq.
Well, I trusted my leaders, and they told me that, and they told the American population that there was weapons of mass destruction. So, I bought into the whole thing.
Henry Kissinger, Dick Nixon's national security advisor, subsequently Secretary of State, is famous for having said that the serviceman is a dumb, stupid brute to be used as a pawn of foreign policy. And Henry Kissinger's attitude about the soldier is not unique. He just happened to get caught speaking candidly about it.
I had learned from studying history that most wars are bogus, because wars are called into existence by a few people who see a way to make an advantage for themselves. At least in the 20th century, that's been the case. We don't fight for land. We don't fight to improve the quality of life for people. We fight for economic advancement, and that's bogus as far as I'm concerned. However, like any person that walks in the rain, you can get wet. So I joined the military for the sake of trying to create a better financial place for my family.
I went over to Lufkin to visit one of my friends, and he said, "Come go to the post office with me." I said, "What are you going to do there?" He said, "I'm joining the Marine Corps. My daddy was a Marine, and I'm going to join the Marine Corps." So I said, "I'll walk down there with you and shoot the bull with the recruiting sergeant. At the time I walked out of there, I was on the slow train to Houston, and the Marine Corps didn't tell me to go home and wait till they called me. I was then on a slow train to California. And the reason I joined, I wanted to find some way to go to school. It's a heck of a way to go to school.
Our son Nick is going to have his 25th birthday. He's going to turn 25 on the 30th of January. He's in Iraq right now, and of course that's also the day that the elections are going to be held. He enlisted in the Army in August of 2001 out of a sense of what he felt was service, obligation, responsibility, duty, all for really noble reasons.
Around my 18th birthday, I went down and signed up and volunteered for Vietnam, volunteered for infantry, and was ready to go off to war. My thought was I was going to go to war and do my job and become a hero, and just like John Wayne and Audie Murphy in all the movies, and it was going to be a glorious thing. We fight our country's battles on the land as on the sea. Admiration of the nation will abide and never cease. The Americans always won. And those people who gave their life for the cause died glorious deaths. You know, it was a good thing. It was a sacrifice, sacrificing for your country. That was a thing that men did.
I was certainly wanted to be a hero. I thought of getting medals. I was very much pro-war because I felt this is what young people should do, like go out and be heroic.
My idea about war was that it was a necessary thing, that the United States was right and everyone else was wrong. And it was our job to protect the freedoms of our country and to assert our ideals over the rest of the world.
11 years ago, as a condition for ending the Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi regime was required to destroy its weapons of mass destruction, to cease all development of such weapons, and to stop all support for terrorist groups. The Iraqi regime has violated all of those obligations. It possesses and produces chemical and biological weapons. It is seeking nuclear weapons.
That day that we found out that he was deploying was very hard. And the reason why it was hard was just because we didn't know what was going on. We didn't even know they were going to Iraq at that point when they were told they were deploying. Then I think it was 2 nights later or something, President Bush came on TV and we sat down to watch, and he said, basically, Saddam, this is your last warning. If you don't get rid of the weapons of mass destruction now, then we're coming over there. And that's when we looked at each other and we're like, oh my God, that's why you're deploying. That's why you're going.
When the moment came, I was ready. And my main concern at that point was making sure that my men were ready, making sure that my men were up to par as far as what we were about to undertake.
I was nervous. I didn't know how long I was going to be there. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do either. I don't think anybody really had an idea of what we were going to do there exactly. My wife was a little nervous. My family was nervous. I was, but everyone was. And we fed off each other's strength that we're going to go over there, we're going to kick ass, we're going to be okay, and we're going to come back alive.
He was home on leave, and we were going camping. My sister's family has a place in South Texas that we were going to go camping, and Nick had gotten there first. And I remember we drove up, and he had gotten the phone call And I got out of the car, and Nick just comes like walking up to me real fast, and it's like, oh, he's got something to tell me. And I think he just wanted to say something before anybody else got a chance. And he said, Mom, I'm going to Iraq.
Before I left, I was very upset when I would turn on the TV and see these war protests, and you would see very public figures coming out and saying they're against the war, the Dixie Chicks and Michael Moore and a lot of Hollywood actors. You started seeing them coming on TV, and I used to think, you know, what do they know? Why are they doing this? They're rich enough as it is. They don't need to be doing this. I felt that they weren't supporting the troops.
Nick knew that we had been involved in some of the protests of the war, and from what he gathered from that was that anybody that was protesting the war or not in support of the administration was not in support of the troops, right. And it was very difficult to convince him that was not the case. That you can have both.
We don't just stick bumper stickers, those yellow magnets on the back of our car and then drive around and think that's it.
When I see a business that has a sign out in front that says, "We support the troops," I'll go inside and I'll ask them, "What are you doing? Thank you very much. I'm a veteran. I appreciate the support for troops. What are you doing?" Which gives me a great opportunity to have a conversation with these folks about what it really means to support the troops. And what it means to support the troops is making certain, first of all, that if we engage in a military action, it is a just and moral and defensible action. Number one, you don't commit young men and women to this horror for poor reasons. But then you pay them well. You equip them appropriately. You take care of them when they come back sick and injured. And all of these things we are not doing.
Fear is a powerful motivator. LBJ said this: if we don't stop the Reds in Vietnam, they'll be in Hawaii and San Francisco. As ludicrous as it sounds today, people took it serious back then. Both presidents used fears and lies to convince a majority of Congress to pass resolutions 2 years ago for this one in Iraq. In both cases, the rationale for war initially was national security. It was in our national interest, first to stop communism, and now, supposedly, to stop terrorism. And in both cases, the president made up his mind for war based on faulty and selective use of intelligence and backed by his own political appointments. Both Johnson and Bush brought themselves to the conclusion that we can't lose.
We thought we'd go in and the people would love us and we wouldn't have to worry about getting shot at. We thought we'd have a lot more support from the people. It's what we were told.
I was expecting, and what was told to me was, we were going to go in and liberate the people of Iraq and provide massive amounts of humanitarian support. When we started killing civilians indiscriminately, that was when I started questioning what was going on.
They had said from the get-go, we're going to win the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people, and we're going to get them on our side. It didn't happen. When I was there, at first the people were really happy because we were getting rid of an evil man. The people started realizing these Americans, these soldiers, aren't here to liberate us, they're here to conquer us.
I was thinking to myself, casualties of war, no big deal. This stuff happens every day. Even though it still started eating away at my soul little by little. After everything calmed down, Baghdad fell. Baghdad was in the hands of the Allied forces. I was expecting massive amounts of humanitarian. It never came.
They tell us to just stop where we were and raid every house, go into every house on a whole block, on a whole street, in a whole square mile radius, and we just take every house, arrest every male, 12 years old to 80 years old, throw them in our trucks and run them off to jail no matter what they've done. You see the wives and the daughters and the sisters crying. You see them so hurt inside because we're hauling off their husbands and they don't know what we're going to do to them. And that was no different from what Saddam did. You know, he would haul away anyone who had caused him trouble, and that's what we as Americans did. We were no different, and they didn't know if we were taking them off to be slaughtered. We were taking the innocent men to the same area, to the same jail, and treating them just as bad as we did the hardened criminals who killed somebody. So that, I guess that really opened my eyes to see what we're really doing there. We're not helping these people, we're only alienating ourselves more, and we're only making the Iraqis more upset with us. So they're more likely to pick up arms and fight us when they see that we're not doing what we told them we'd do.
We're in a quagmire, and it's go on and on and on. We have created more terrorists than ever we could have ever conceived of.
As in Vietnam, Iraq is now bogged down in a guerrilla war in which we cannot tell friend from foe. In both Vietnam and Iraq, the borders are not secure. One in the jungle, the other in the desert. New enemies are engaging us in battle every day. In Vietnam, there were few places that are secure. We learned that in Tet, 1968, when the enemy attacked. All of this was in American living rooms. In Iraq, insurgents lob mortars and even now get bombs into the most secure area, the Green Zone. Like Johnson in Vietnam, Bush in Iraq got us involved in a guerrilla war without a satisfactory exit strategy, which in both cases resulted in declining military morale. After Tet, Vietnam's declining morale led to questioning of the commander-in-chief, which is already taking place in Iraq.
You start seeing the mission that you were told to do, and you find it has nothing to do with Saddam Hussein. You find it had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. You find that you're raiding homes, that you're treating everybody like they're guilty until proven innocent, and that just wasn't something that Americans are raised to believe.
I had a lieutenant colonel. We were in a command post, and he said, "Who's your enemy?" 3 or 4 enlisted people in there, and we bounced off some answers. He said, "Your enemy is whoever the President of the United States says it is." That was a wake-up call, but I still had to keep on pushing.
You can never, ever, ever follow your government or your commander or your platoon leader blindly, and that you have a responsibility to behave in a moral way, and that sometimes it takes more guts to say no than it does to blindly react and follow the pack.
What changed was an understanding of the difference between my country and the government. That those were two things that I had to separate in my mind. And that governments composed of men can do very, very bad things, even when they're speaking the language of the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and the struggle for freedom.
Us veterans have seen this movie before. Faced with a stark future after Tet in 1968, LBJ asked its citizens, "Join us in a national effort to win the war, to complete the war." After the April insurgency, which was Bush's Tet, this administration asked Americans, "Stay the course, finish the job." In Vietnam, the failed attempt to finish that job between Tet and our withdrawal in 1973 cost 21,000 additional combat deaths and over 1 million Vietnamese. How many deaths will it cost in Iraq?
Now they're saying it's 1,434 coalition deaths. Oh, geez, and that's gone up. See, they're at 1,288.
Okay, that's interesting that they update every day they do it?
You hardly know. I mean, but now see, CNN, you can get a total here, but they don't put anything down until they have a name. November was the deadliest month yet.
Yeah.
Okay, the next highest was April, which was 135. We got 136 in November of 2004.
Okay, so 25 so far. We're maybe a little over a third of the.
They've been averaging, if they take from the beginning of the war to the end, they've been averaging 10 a week, but that's going up because I'm getting 4 and 5 a day. On the sign, I keep the count, I keep the total wounded. Now it's wounded in action, so there's a lot of other people that are hurt, like those truck wrecks and stuff like that, that aren't on there. So that's actually wounded in action. That's going to be Purple Heart, combat wounded. I've got names listed through here over and over and over again where I just take my pad and I'll write down the names and what we've got, new names, what we've got right now. They've got everything that the military's released right now, because normally what they'll do is they'll give us something. If they don't have the name, they'll still give the count and they'll say not yet announced. Yeah, I think the numbers are the most important.
Yeah, I do too.
And this hasn't changed. Start back here. They tend to do okay even in the rain. They get a little damp, but they're still legible. And this is my habit is I will. Every day, after I get it up, I just kind of contemplate, and I read every name in my head.
It's too easy to live in a community and not be aware, or at least pretend like you're not aware of what the costs are. The costs here on this day, and this is about a week ago, were 1,361 U.S. military were dead in Iraq, 10,252 wounded, and total coalition dead 1,505.
I don't think about this. It's not something that I picture or I envision. Or I even contemplate, but it's in the back of my mind. And I know every day that goes by, that one of those gray sedans could pull up here in front of this house. You know, somebody could get out and come out and tell me the news I don't want to hear.
I just found it hard every day to not think about, what if my husband's not here tomorrow? And nobody my age, I mean, we're 21 years old, and when he was over there, we were 19. No married couple who's 19 should have to think about, is my spouse going to be there the next day? Am I going to get a call tomorrow saying something bad has happened to him? So every day, and I'm not kidding, 5 times, or every 5 minutes, I mean, some thought would come through my head and I would just be like, okay, don't want to jinx anything. You know, it's just like every thought that comes through your head, you're like, oh my God, why did I think that? And God, please just keep my husband safe. And every 5 minutes just praying that please keep my husband safe and bring him home.
Something about these last few weeks of Nick's deployment has compressed everything into this almost unmanageable ball of the sum total of all I've been feeling for the last year. And instead of feeling relief that he's coming home, which I do, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I'm dreading even more these last few weeks. It's almost like I'm saying to myself, oh my God, we've made it this far. We've made it this far, and it's just almost too much to ask for that he's going to make it home okay. I've heard of too many stories of guys that were wounded or killed, you know, the last day they were in Iraq. or the Black Hawk helicopters, and some of the soldiers were flying out to go home on leave. I haven't let my guard down, and if anything, it's my feelings of dread have intensified.
You go into war not knowing what to expect, but you know people are going to die, and you know you may have to kill people, and that's something that you try to mentally prepare yourself for. But upon seeing death, upon seeing the victims, the innocent victims and the guilty victims scattered alongside the road together, you drive up through Iraq and you see tanks bombed out, Americans and Iraqi jets strewn all over the ground, and armored vehicles, civilian cars just blown up, and you see that on the side of the road. You see blood on the street from where a body was once, and it starts taking a toll on you after you see it for so long. And then you start seeing people who were killed and who were injured for life. They're missing legs, and they can't hear in one ear, and they're blind, they lose their eye. I mean, this stuff becomes a daily reality for you, and a daily reminder of just how much war has not changed. Whether you're fighting in the 1940s, World War II, or now, the methods of killing have changed, but you're still seeing death daily. You're still reminded of how ugly it is.
The first casualty I saw was an enemy soldier. When I saw my own buddies wounded and killed, there was a huge turmoil within me. I mean, I hated the people that did it, but I understood that they were humans and they were trying to survive as well, and that we were invaders in their land and we didn't belong there. That's when I realized that this didn't have anything to do with God and country. That what we were fighting for was each other, just our brothers, and trying to stay alive and get back home. That's all it was.
I'm just trying to picture me being one of them, or if a foreign nation came into our country saying they were going to get rid of our leader, President Bush. Let's just throw that name out there. And then them coming in saying they want to get rid of President Bush, and then when they come in, they drive up and down your streets daily saying they're doing that to protect you. But then they raid your neighbor's house and haul away all the males in that house, and then they raid your friend's house and take away your friend for no apparent reason. And then they could very well come, knowing that they could come into your house at any moment and just destroy everything and take everything that you've spent your life earning. You look at it from somebody else's shoes, and you see a different story from what you're being told. War is not what they teach in the history books. In the history books and the government books, they only tell you the good things. You watch movies, you watch the war movies, and you're like, wow, that's something that I want to do. And then you go over there and you realize, no, it's not. Because you don't hear the bullets whiz by your head. You start seeing people beside you die, and you question why. Why did that person die? What did they die for? And is this something they were worth? You have to, if you're going to die, let it be for something you believe in. Not because you were told to, but let it be for something you believe in.
We're raised in this country, regardless of your religious preference, it's splattered on you no matter what. Thou shalt not kill. We're raised that if you take another person's life, you're a criminal. That's what we learn. It's embedded in us. What must it take for us to go to another land where we don't belong and kill people we don't know?
We heard a stray gunfire, and stray gunfire with Marines that haven't slept in 48 hours, that have been, continuously on the move for days. Hearing a stray gunfire and seeing Iraqis at the end of the road, with signs. Marines tend to get a little bit nervous or trigger happy, so we ended up opening up on a group of Iraqi demonstrators and killing them. I started looking for weapons on the ground. I didn't see any weapons, none. They were just holding a protest. I became pretty disturbed at that point when I realized that none of the protesters had any weapons. And as we drove around this way, I saw some RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, that were lined up against a concrete barrier underneath the overpass. And I thought to myself at first, I was like, ha, okay, all right, they had RPGs. As we were driving up, it hit me. I was like, wait a minute. They had RPGs. Why didn't they use RPGs when we first got there? Everything just kind of went black. And I'm thinking, I'm like, no. You know, these guys, no, there's got to be a main reason, something here. So at that point, I still didn't want to believe that we opened up on protesters, you know, or innocent civilians. I was thinking to myself, there has to be, you know, a logic explanation. So we got up to the highway overpass and we turned around and we decided to come back down and go back to the staging area where we were at. As we were coming back down, I saw, my vehicle's right about here, I saw an Iraqi hiding behind a concrete pillar. So he came out and he had his hands up, and as I motioned him with my rifle, he ran off, and then, well, he didn't ran off, he hobbled off, and as he hobbled off, half of his foot was cut off. He probably took a 50 cal round in the foot, and the foot was attached just by meat and tendons. So, you know, and of course he didn't have a weapon. I was thinking to myself, now, if I put myself in his position and the Americans just opened up on us and my foot is just cut off, if I had a weapon, I would have done everything in my power to fire back. But that didn't take place. None of that, there was no retaliation whatsoever. So that's when I drew my conclusion that these were in fact just peaceful demonstrators, and they weren't there to cause any harm.
VVAW many years ago adopted a slogan. It said, "Honor the warrior, not the war." And the first thing that we have to do to understand this phenomenon is separate the issue of men and women serving in uniform in combat from the policies that got them there. Now, we're going to talk about the warrior who has been trained and prepared in ways that are incredibly sophisticated to go to war and to take human life. That's what the business is. You kill people and blow things up. That's what war is about, and we train our men and women very well to do that. For those who have not been through that training experience and then the actuality of carrying out that training, this is a very foreign concept. Fewer than 10% of human beings are prepared to kill other human beings. The rest of us, this is a deeply held thing that we don't do. We don't kill people. That's a bad thing. The military training gets you to a point where you can do that, and the training is quite effective. So you go into a situation where you're prepared to kill. You're ready to do it. And then they start shooting at you. That makes you angry. It may make you frightened. If it doesn't, there's something wrong with you. And so your emotions become very abnormal. And if this goes on for a long period of time, it is a sustained exposure to this fear and violence and the loss of friends, and personal injury, this mix of emotions just becomes more and more extreme. You need to couple with that then the reality that in war, fatigue is frequently a common companion. And this is something I think people have a very difficult time understanding. For the infantry troop or the support troop who's engaged in combat operations, sleep is a precious commodity. And so you're sleep deprived, and you're angry, and you're fearful, and you're all of these emotions, and you have been trained to kill. So this Marine going into the mosque and finding the guy wounded, who knows what was in his mind, but some of the reports I've read persuade me that he really did think this guy was armed and going to commit a hostile act, and his experience to that point would have demonstrated to him that that was not an unreasonable thing to expect to have happen.
These young men and women who have gone to Iraq, many of them went with the idea that they were fighting for their country, that they were fighting for our freedoms, that they were fighting to protect this country. They're going to come home, and sooner or later the truth will set in. And the truth will set in that they fought for nothing, they killed for nothing, and their friends died for nothing. Just like Vietnam veterans had to come home and eventually realize. And it'll make it that much tougher, and it'll make the hole that much bigger. So what do we have to do? We have to understand this. We have to bring these people home. We have to welcome them. We have to love them. We have to be there for them.
No matter how much I tell her or tell my family or friends about the war, they can never truly understand what the situation was like, what Iraq smelled like, how hot it was, how scared you were. You can't explain what the feeling is when you hear a mortar go off and you have no idea how far it is and you feel the earth shaking because of it. You have no idea until you're there. And it's something I don't ever want to experience again. And it's something that, as little boys growing up, you play cops and robbers and stuff, and you play soldier out in the woods or in the field, and you dream of being in combat someday as a kid. Then you go and you realize it was nothing like what you thought it was.
You don't see the young boys that are being slaughtered. You don't see the ones that are being wounded, badly wounded, and trying to survive. You just don't have, you can't comprehend war unless you're in it.
It's hard to not be able to relate to everything that he sees, and I never will. I mean, we can go on and he can tell me all the stories, but I was never there, and I will never understand fully, and no one can unless they are there.
They're going to realize maybe 2 years, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there are things that are impressed in their mind that they're going to see every day.
Once you train somebody to kill, you just can't turn it off. Once you train somebody, once you dehumanize somebody, and once you desensitize somebody to violence, you just can't turn it off. I call it the bear. A lot of people ask me, what does the tattoo on my hand mean? And I tell them that it's the bear, and it's just a constant reminder to me that creature, lives in my soul and he lives in my heart. And I refer to the bear as the dehumanizing, the desensitized part of my psyche, and it's just a constant reminder to me that it's there, and that I have to keep it in check. I have to keep it. I have to be constantly aware, and whenever you train like that, and whenever you reach that level of psychopath, it's not something that's easily turned off, and it takes a very strong-willed person to be able to control it. And that's basically what I do every day. That's how I live my life, controlling the beast, controlling the bear.
I became very angry at society. I felt like I was lied to and deceived in my reasons for going to war. It wasn't about what they said, it was about what the government said that it was about. So I became very angry at the government, and then I became very angry at society, because I found that our country, the people in general, had a very wrong idea about what war was really like, about what Iraq was really like, and nobody really looked into it that much. They all just assumed that they should be for it. So we started seeing so much patriotism, but not really aimed at anything. They felt that supporting the troops meant supporting the war.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have nothing to begin with today, so I will go straight to your questions. Seeing only Mark.
Only Mark.
This will be the only question of the briefing. Go ahead.
The fact that the Iraq Survey Group has now folded up its field operations, can you explain to us if there is any sense of embarrassment or lack of comfort about the fact that after 2 years of looking, these people found nothing that the President and others assured us they would find?
Well, I think the President already talked about this last October.
Chief Weapons Inspector Charles Dolfer has now issued a comprehensive report that confirms the earlier conclusion of David Kay that Iraq did not have the weapons that our intelligence believed were there.
This country is addicted to war. And what I mean by that is we spend tremendous amount of money on building these sophisticated weapons, these sophisticated airplanes, these sophisticated all kinds of things. And these companies are, this is what they feed on.
President Dwight Eisenhower, who was a general, 4- or 5-star general in the United States Army, was elected president on November 5th, 1952. And as he left office in 1961, being replaced by John F. Kennedy, he said, beware of the military-industrial complex, because that is a cancer. It's a cancer. And so if we did not spend the money on war, what could we spend the money on? That's the real question. What are our options? I would say master the possibilities. Cause yourself to figure out what else we can do with the money and demand that it be done.
I've come to the conclusion that the cost of war is incalculable. As I've watched the cost of the war that I participated in to continue to mount year on year on year in the intervening 35, 37 years in my case, it has become clear to me that we really, particularly in this modern age, we never really will understand the true magnitude and cost, because those costs keep compounding long after that particular military engagement is over. There is a reason that most, well, all sane and moral men and women who have served in the military will say, you just don't want to go to war. You don't want to do it. You do it only as a very last resort, because the costs are so enormous.
To Lufkin to visit one of my friends. And he said, come go to the post office with me. I said, what are you going to do there? He says, I'm joining the Marine Corps. My daddy was a Marine, and I'm going to join the Marine Corps. So I said, I'll walk down there with you and shoot the bull with the recruiting sergeant. At the time I walked out of there, I was on the slow train to Houston, and the Marine Corps didn't tell me to go home and wait till they called me. I was then on a slow train to California. And the reason I joined, I wanted to find some way to go to school. It's a heck of a way to go to school.
Our son Nick is going to have his 25th birthday. He's going to turn 25 on the 30th of January. He's in Iraq right now, and of course that's also the day that the elections are going to be held. He enlisted in the Army in August of 2001 out of a sense of what he felt was...
I trusted my leaders, and they told me that, and they told the American population that there was weapons of mass destruction. So, I bought into the whole thing.
Henry Kissinger, Dick Nixon's national security advisor, subsequently Secretary of State, is famous for having said that the serviceman is a dumb, stupid brute to be used as a pawn of foreign policy. And Henry Kissinger's attitude about the soldier is not unique. He just happened to get caught speaking candidly about it.
I had learned from studying history that most wars are bogus, because wars are called into existence by a few people who see a way to make an advantage for themselves. At least in the 20th century, that's been the case. We don't fight for land. We don't fight to improve the quality of life for people. We fight for economic advancement, and that's bogus as far as I'm concerned. However, like any person that walks in the rain, you can get wet. So I joined the military for the sake of trying to create a better financial place for my family.
I went over to
carefully weighed the human cost of every option before us. As the Commander-in-Chief, I know the risks to our country, fully responsible to the young men and women in uniform who may face these risks.
Unlike the men and women we memorialize here today, we are fortunate to still be living. This leaves us with a great responsibility. The responsibility to live good, honorable lives. To join hands with people from all over the world and seek ways to end the tragedies of war forever. We have a responsibility to take on this mission for those individuals represented by these symbols, as well as the millions of people whose lives have been taken or forever changed by war.
Turning on the TV, we would see President Bush talking about how evil Iraq was, how evil Saddam Hussein was, and how much we needed to take him out to make the world safe for democracy. So at that point, I felt that it was the right thing to do. And as a soldier, you're trained from day one to do what you're told when you're told to do it. So we joined. I thought that was the best thing. We were doing what was best for the country by going into Iraq.